most importantly, Paul is here. So I'm back for my yearly video. I did my March movie madness again, where I watched one movie, at least one movie, every day in March. There were several days where I watched 2, and one day where I watched 3 movies. So let's talk about it. March 1st, I watched The Vanishing, which I believe is a Dutch movie that takes place in France. And I believe it's Dutch that they're speaking. This movie I've seen suggested a lot for disturbing movies, and it was psychologically disturbing, but really nothing to see here as far as disturbing content. It's just the thought of what's going on. It's scary. And I liked that one a lot. I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. On March 2nd, I watched Badlands, Terrence Malick, his movie from 1973 with Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen, and this was a pretty good movie. I really liked the setting and the story was good. The score was so familiar to me. I knew I had heard this before, and it occurred to me that this score was in True Romance, which is a very similar type of story, so I thought that was a nice little homage, and it was kind of cool to know that that music belonged to a different movie, because hearing it in True Romance, you're like, this music's weird for this movie. So interesting. I gave that 3.5 stars. On March 3rd, I actually watched 3 movies. So first was the called Perfect Body, made-for-TV movie, and that starred Kimberly, the Pink Ranger, and it was about gymnasts who are trying to maintain the perfect body at the right weight by any means necessary. Later that night, I watched the movie Coherence, which I'd seen once before, but I decided to show this to my husband because he likes these movies that are like mind-bending, and it's like a puzzle. You gotta kind of figure it all out, and it was a lot of fun. I gave that 4 stars. And later that night, I watched The Princess and the Frog because I had not seen this, and I've been told it's wonderful, and it really was. I just loved all the characters. They're very lovable and adorable. I really like the little lightning bug and the crocodile, which I found the very next day. I went shopping and I found the crocodile, a little toy of him, so I bought it because he's so cute. March 4th, I watched Curse of the Werewolf, and that's on that was on Svengoolie, which I watch every Saturday night, except for tonight. I'm not watching it. It's that was a good movie though. It starred Oliver Reed, who cannot miss, and this movie was surprisingly disturbing, and there's some scenes that are not suitable for all viewers, that's for sure. March 5th, I watched Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I'm a big Weird Al fan, and this was funny at times, but honestly I only laughed like 3 or 4 times. I didn't think it was that funny. And some of the direction that they went in was it was silly, but not in the right way. March 6th, I watched King of the Ants. This movie was really all over the place, and I don't have much to say about it. I didn't really care for it. I gave that 2 stars. March 7th, I watched Aqua Teen Forever, Plantasm. This movie was pretty good, actually. Like, I thought it was going to be kind of, like, too convoluted, and it was easy to follow, and it was really funny. I loved it, actually. On March 8th, I watched Smiley Face with Anna Faris. It's a stoner movie, and it was so funny. Like, way better than I thought it would be. And my favorite part is when she's trying to back out of her parking space. And it wasn't going so great. It's too good. March 9th, I dived into my first Tom DeSillo movie, which was The Real Blonde. And I liked this movie because it reminded me of Sex and the City type of scenario. It, probably because of the New York setting. But it ended up kind of going nowhere, but it was an enjoyable thing to watch at the time. And then the next day, on March 10th, I watched Living in Oblivion, which is a Tom DeSillo movie about making a movie starring some really great actors. Steve Buscemi, who's also in The Real Blonde, and Catherine Keener, who's also in The Real Blonde. I think Catherine Keener might be his Tom DeSillo's muse. She seems to play the main girl in his movies. But that was a fun movie to watch. A lot of cool people in it. And that one had more of a roundabout story that went somewhere and ended somewhere. On March 11th, I watched Island of Lost Souls. This movie's from 1932. It was really, really good. It was the Island of Dr. Moreau story. Very impressive, especially for the year that it was made. It also had a very striking actor in it. He was very good looking, which I don't really feel that way about most people from that time era. March 12th, I watched You Won't Be Alone. That's like a from 2022 witch movie. It was very similar to The Witch and Gretel and Hansel in atmosphere and tone and depressingness. And I'm not a big fan of that type of movie and the slow pace, but this was a pretty good movie. I like the story better than those other ones I mentioned, but still not my type. Later that day, on March 12th, I watched Drop Dead Gorgeous, which I definitely used to love a lot when I was younger. And it was still really, really funny. Great cast. The only thing is some of those jokes don't age very well at all. But that's usually how it goes for those types of movies. March 13th, I watched 8½, Federico Fellini, the first movie I've seen from him. I had a really tough time getting through this movie in the beginning. I was feeling like a chore, and I was feeling really bored, and I decided to just surrender to it and push through, and I ended up really liking it. I thought it was pretty good. Thought-provoking and such. On March 13th, that same day, later on, I watched Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. I just recently saw this one last year, and I really like that Alan Tudyk, or however you say his last name. He's a funny mother. But the last scene of that movie needs to be scrapped for sure. It was totally tasteless and bad, and I don't care for the love story in that movie, but everything else is really funny. On March 14th, I watched Paris, Texas. I've heard a lot about this one. It's one of the greats, and it started off really slow but still pretty interesting, and where it ended up was just not at all what I expected, and it was good. It was a good movie. I gave it 3½, so it was a little bit better than average for me. March 15th, I watched Slums of Beverly Hills, starring Natasha Lyonne and Marissa Tomei. There's some weird subject matter in this that I was not expecting. It was like pretty feel good up until a certain point, and I didn't really like this movie too much. Seems to be a cult classic though, so I thought it could be good, but it wasn't for me. March 16th, one of the standout movies for me this month was The Crying Game. I've heard this movie be made fun of for certain things, or, you know, it's like infamous for its one plot point, but this movie was really, really good. I liked how I didn't know anything about it other than what people say about it, but it was really nice. Good, great story. Great actors, or great characters, I should say. The actors were great as well, but Crying Game, highly suggest that movie. On March 17th, I watched Sorry to Bother You, which I thought was awful. Absolutely awful. I was liking how it was starting off, but it just like, it went quickly to a place where I felt it could not come back from its horrible direction, and it just went off the rails towards the end, and it was just a heinous abomination of a movie. March 18th, I watched Leprechaun because I've never seen it, and I didn't realize that Willow was the Leprechaun. Warwick Davis, I think his name is. Yeah, he's the Leprechaun, and no wonder he's so lovable, because he's awesome. And a young Jennifer Aniston was very funny and charming. I like that. March 18th, later that day, I watched Conga on Svengoolie, and that was an interesting little flick. Not too memorable, but it was pretty fun at the same time. March 19th, I watched The Breakup because I was having a bit of an Jennifer Aniston, had that flavor still in, and I wanted to watch that because I used to like that when it first came out, and watching it now, it really wasn't that great, and the main thing I like about it is the Chicago setting and all of the Chicago references and such. Later that day, on March 19th, I watched Ichi the Killer, and the main character of this movie, I wouldn't even say is Ichi. It was Kakihara, and his outfits were insanely wonderful. I loved his character. He was so cool. March 20th, we watched Hercules with The Rock from 2014, which I just think is a really fun movie. And I like those epic, warlike Roman Greek movies. March 21st, watched Romeo and Juliet from 1996 with DiCaprio and Claire Danes, and I watched that in high school in my English class, and it was okay at the time, but watching it now, like, I just like absolutely loved it. It was so fun, tragic, cool, sad, same thing as tragic, but I loved the settings, the colors, the drama, the way they say the Shakespearean lines. Like, it was very me. I didn't want it to end. It was so fun, and just what I needed to watch that day for sure. March 22nd, I watched Lost in Translation. I've always heard this movie was pretty good, from Sofia Coppola, and I really did not like it. It was so boring, so boring, and their connection wasn't doing it for me. March 23rd, I watched The Beach. Big fan of Danny Boyle, so I thought I'd watch this, and plus I had just recently watched Leonardo DiCaprio and Romeo and Juliet, so I thought, oh, I'll check this one out right now. He was so annoying in this movie, and I didn't like this movie at all. I really thought it was going to be something totally different, more like, I guess I thought it was going to be kind of like Island of Dr. Moreau, or something like Old, where there's something else going on the beach besides just a bunch of hippies gatekeeping the island. Stupid. March 24th, I watched Superstar, because I used to love that when I was a little kid, and it was still pretty funny. Very funny. March 25th, another standout movie I watched was Showgirls. I've heard a lot about this movie, how it's so bad it's good, how it's NC-17, and nothing could prepare me for this movie because it was so out there. But I really liked it. It was just what I like: colorful, dramatic, over the top, lots of beautiful people. It was just really probably one of the best ones I watched in terms of experience. It was a great experience watching it. March 25th, so later that day, I watched The Blood of Dracula on Svengoolie. It's about a girl who goes to boarding school, and one of her professors ends up hypnotizing her and also turning her into a vampire somehow. That one was okay. Just okay. March 26th, I watched Johnny Suede, which is another Tom DeCillo movie starring Brad Pitt and Catherine Keener, and it was so much like a David Lynch movie, and I was liking it for that reason, but then like it doesn't go anywhere, sadly, and then like you end up like really disliking Johnny Suede in the end. It's like, okay, so he's a total asshole then? Okay. March 27th, I watched The Good Doctor with Orlando Bloom and Riley Keough. Don't know how to say her last name. This was pretty... I didn't hate it. About a doctor who's trying to keep his patient in hospital for some reason. And he ends up not doing right by her. On March 28th, I watched The Brood, which is a David Cronenberg movie, and this was recommended to me by a friend, and it was awesome. It was really awesome. I liked it so much. And Oliver Reed is in this one too, and he can't miss. March 29th, I watched John Wick, and I've been really wanting to watch these movies for a while because I saw a little bit of John Wick 2 back in 2017 when it like first came out, and so anyways, it was really good. I really liked it. I like action in that way, and it was awesome settings, beautifully lit, great cinematography. Like, it's funny, it's self-aware, it's awesome fight scenes, just so much fun. I really liked the first one a lot. And then on March 30th, I watched John Wick Chapter 2, and I liked this one, but not as much as the first one, and I did like how it ended though, and those movies are just really good. And I really like how these movies just pick up where the other one leaves off of, instead of like giving you all the backstory and all that. It just gets right into it. I love that about it. So on March 31st, I ended my March movie madness with Matilda. Well, I watched two movies. So first was Matilda, and I had seen this as a kid but only remember the chocolate cake scene. So watching it as an adult, like, you really feel for her, and but you really understand like how funny the whole scenario is too. It was really funny. I love the actors and the characters and the world. It was so interesting. I loved Matilda. I'm glad I watched it. And the very last movie I watched was John Wick 3, Parabellum, and this was really good. I liked the third one, I think, a little bit more than the second one. It ended really good as well. Like, I'm excited for the fourth one, and that will probably be the first movie that I'll watch in April. I don't know when I'm gonna go see that, but I'm excited to see it in theaters because it'll be the first one I will see in theaters. And yeah, so of all of March, the standout movies I would say are The Crying Game, Romeo and Juliet, Showgirls, and the John Wick movies. Those were just some of my favorites. Just tons of fun, lots of color, lots of action, some of them, and just really great characters. I think that's what I like the most is, like, even though, like, I can't say that for all of them they have the best acting, but it keeps you engaged. And yeah, so for March I had a lot of fun doing this challenge, and as hard as it is, it's something I enjoy, so and while I can make it happen, I will, and I will make sure to let you know about it. Anywho, thanks for watching, and Paul, we are signing off. Goodbye.